My sister's kid said, "I used your card for snacks." By morning, $6,300 was gone. Mom shrugged it off, so I froze every card linked to their accounts. At 6 a.m., my sister screamed. And 10 minutes later, I got a call from. You know that gut-wrenching feeling when your whole world just shifts? Like the floor drops out from under you? I felt that cold, sickening dread when I saw it. $6,300, gone, not stolen by some anonymous hacker, but wiped out by the very family I was desperately trying to save. My chest tightened. It wasn't just money, it was almost everything I had left. Gone on absolute nonsense. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just stared at my laptop screen, feeling a crushing weight I couldn't breathe under. That money? It was supposed to stretch for the entire month. I was already pulling miracles, trying to support 5 people on a single paycheck, myself, my daughter, and my sister's whole family. I scrolled through the charges, disbelief warring with a slow burn of anger. Louis Vuitton. ZA. Sneakers that cost more than my rent from back in college. High-end hair tools, niche skincare brands, even a deposit for a wellness retreat. I actually laughed out loud at that last one, not because it was funny, but because it was so utterly, mind-numbingly absurd. It was my 18-year-old niece. Unemployed, never had a dime to her name, and she'd used my saved card details for a luxury shopping spree. And this wasn't an accident. I knew it, because of what she'd said just hours earlier. I dragged myself home a little after 8 p.m. that night. Long day, back-to-back meetings, exhausted, starving, and still had a pile of emails waiting. There she was, curled on the couch in leggings and a hoodie, scrolling through her phone, looking like she didn't have a single care in the world. I asked her how her day was. And she just casually, so casually, said she'd used my card for some snacks and a few other things because it was saved in the Amazon account. I froze. Stopped dead in my tracks. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She just shrugged. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. I just used your card for snacks, she repeated. It's not a big deal. I didn't argue. I didn't say another word. I just walked to my room, heart pounding, and opened my laptop. The moment I saw that balance, the air left my lungs. That card wasn't meant for them. It was my emergency fund. And because of them, emergencies had become weekly events, groceries, school supplies, gas for their car. Little things that added up. But this was a full-on assault on my financial stability. And she talked about it like she'd borrowed a hairbrush. They'd been living with me for 6 months. 6. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks. My sister had sworn they just needed a little time to figure things out. Her husband was laid off, she hadn't worked in years, rent was too high, their credit trashed. I believed them. I let them in. I fed them, paid for them. I even made my own daughter move into my room so my niece could have her own space. Every single week, a new excuse. And every week, I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't temporary. It was comfortable for them. Around midnight, I finally knocked on their door. My sister opened it, sleepy, annoyed. I told her what happened, that her daughter had spent over $6,000. She blinked at me, like the words hadn't even registered. Then she said it. The words that snapped something deep inside me. Kids will be kids. That was it. Not loudly, not with a scene. Just a quiet, steel-cold click. I said nothing else. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat in the silence. At 1:17 a.m., I started freezing every single card they had ever used or had access to. Every sub-account, every auto-login. I even called a few retailers to reverse or cancel pending purchases. One had already shipped, but I knew the return window was 14 days. I had time. By 6 a.m., I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard a scream. Not a yell. A scream. It came from the guest room. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my sister's husband. His voice was instantly aggressive, demanding to know why their cards weren't working, why their apps were locked, why their Uber Eats orders weren't going through. I listened to his entire rant without saying a word. Then I hung up. I didn't feel sorry. I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. Because this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was what happens when you teach people that your boundaries are optional. They had crossed the line. And they weren't going to like what came next. By the time the sun was fully up, the house had gone from quiet tension to full-blown chaos. My sister stormed through the hallway like a woman betrayed, slamming cabinets, asking loud rhetorical questions like, "How could Abigail do this to us?" Her husband was outside on the porch, chain vaping, and on speakerphone, talking about how I'd humiliated his family. Meanwhile, my niece, the one who'd wiped my account clean, sat in the living room clutching her phone, crying over the handbags and essential items that were suddenly being refunded or marked return initiated. And in the middle of all that, I was just sitting at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee, like it was the only thing tethering me to earth. None of them had the guts to confront me right away. My sister passed by a few times, waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. I wanted them to feel the silence. I wanted them to sit in the wreckage and think about the fact that they had caused it, not me. Around noon, my sister finally broke the standoff. She came into the kitchen, insisting we needed a grown-up conversation as a family. I agreed, only because a tiny, insane part of me still hoped they'd realize how far they'd gone. We sat down in the living room, me on one side, them on the other, like it was a negotiation table. My sister started, "We feel like your reaction was a bit extreme." Then came the usual, I'd embarrassed them, created instability, that I should have just talked to them first before cutting off access. As if $6,300 vanishing without a single heads up from them was perfectly reasonable. Her husband jumped in, saying I made them feel unwelcome and helpless. He actually said I'd damaged the trust between us. Then my niece, the one who'd spent my money like she had a brand deal with Gucci, chimed in. She said she was under a lot of pressure and that, at her age, stability was essential for her growth. Shopping, she claimed, made her feel in control of something, even just for a moment. I just sat there, listening, wondering if they'd all collectively lost their minds. They weren't ashamed. They were angry at me. I told them, calmly, that I had less than $300 to my name now. That I was behind on 2 utility bills. That I'd given up nearly every comfort I had so they wouldn't have to sleep in their car. That I hadn't had a proper weekend off in over 4 months because of extra shifts. That my own daughter had to give up her room, her routines, her peace, for people who couldn't even say thank you. And now they were talking to me about stability. I said I didn't want the money back. And I meant it. Not because I was forgiving them. But because I was done. Done expecting responsibility from people who lived like the world owed them something. Done making excuses for grown adults who thought kindness was a weakness. My sister started to cry. Her husband looked down. My niece didn't say anything, just got up and walked to her room. The next morning, I left the house early. Just got in the car and drove. No destination. I just needed to be away. I grabbed a gas station coffee and parked in a grocery store lot, watching people go about their normal day. I sat there for over an hour. When I came back, an envelope was on the kitchen counter. My name, rushed handwriting. Inside, "We're sorry. We'll fix it." No money, no plan, no next steps. Just 7 words. That's when it really sank in. They weren't going to fix anything. Because in their heads, they hadn't broken anything. And that meant I had to be the one to change everything. That envelope sat there for 2 full days before I even touched it again. "We're sorry. We'll fix it." That was it. No explanation, no money, no plan. Just a vague promise, as if that was supposed to magically patch over them draining my account and still not doing a damn thing to make it right. They tiptoed around me for a while. Quiet in the mornings. Dishes done. Shoes off at the door. But it felt hollow. Like they were just waiting for my mood to pass, as if I was just another storm they'd weathered before. But this time was different. I was watching them now. Really watching. My niece was still waking up past 10 a.m., cross-legged on the couch, scrolling, probably shopping online with whatever money she had left from God knows where. Still no job, still no effort. One afternoon, she actually asked if I'd help her rebuild her Amazon cart because everything got refunded. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. My sister tried harder to act productive. Mentioned sending out a few applications but couldn't remember where. Said she was looking into remote opportunities, but spent most of her time rewatching old shows on her laptop. Her husband? He spent the majority of his time in the garage, hiding behind the excuse of job hunting while vaping and watching YouTube videos. It was surreal. Like I was living in a simulation where nobody could see the wreckage except me. So, one night after work, I stayed up late. At the dining table, I made a plan. I printed out job listings from 3 local websites. Entry-level stuff, nothing fancy. Just a way to get their feet in the door, to start earning again. I sorted them by skill level, made notes about potential matches, even wrote down bus routes for the ones they could get to without needing my car. The next day, I called a house meeting. Told them I had something to share, asked for 15 minutes. They sat down, looking more annoyed than curious. I started by saying I wasn't looking to punish anyone. That I knew things had been hard, understood the pressure. But that I simply couldn't carry 5 people on one salary anymore. I told them I'd printed out job opportunities for each of them, things they could apply for this week. If they took action now, we could move forward, together. My sister didn't say much, just kept nodding without really looking at me. Her husband leaned back on the couch and said he appreciated the effort, but it's not that simple. That there were other factors I wasn't considering. I asked him what those were. He didn't answer. Then came the worst part. My niece rolled her eyes. Picked up the job listings, glanced at the paper like it was a joke, then stood up and dropped them in the trash. I'm not going to work at some fast food place like I'm 16, she scoffed. I'm not desperate. I looked at her. Then at my sister. Nothing. They just let it happen. No one corrected her. No one apologized. No one pulled her aside later. It was just normal to them. I went to bed without another word. But that night, lying in the dark, I realized that the person I'd become over the last 6 months, the one who kept giving, sacrificing, stretching herself thin, she had to disappear. Because they weren't just taking money anymore. They were taking pieces of me. And I had one final move left. I barely slept. The disrespect, the entitlement, the way they looked at me like I was in their way for trying to help them stand on their own 2 feet. My niece's words echoed, I'm not desperate. After tossing those job listings like they were a menu she didn't like. By morning, I knew what I had to do. First thing, I called work and took a personal day. Then, I started gathering receipts. Return windows were closing, and I wasn't going to let that money slip away. Most of the big-ticket items my niece ordered hadn't even been opened yet. Still in their boxes, sitting in the corner of her room like trophies. I didn't ask for permission. I just packed them into the trunk of my car. She didn't even notice. She was in the backyard on FaceTime, laughing, saying, she's still mad about the card thing. Laughing like I was some uptight idiot who couldn't take a joke. I drove straight to the high-end boutique downtown and returned the handbag first. They asked if I was the original purchaser. Yes, I said. No questions. Refund processed, $1,199 back to my account. Then Sephora. The Nike store. A small online boutique with a physical location across the city. I spent 5 hours driving, returning every last thing I could. By the end of the day, I'd recovered nearly $4,500. I came home exhausted, but calmer than I'd felt in weeks. I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water when my niece finally noticed. She came flying into the room, demanding to know where her stuff was. I told her, flat out, I returned it. It was never yours to begin with. She started screaming. Not just yelling, screaming. Called me a thief, called me jealous, said I was ruining her life. Then she did something I never expected. She picked up my coffee mug and threw it at the wall. The crash was so loud my daughter came running out of her room. My sister came in seconds later, asking what the hell was going on. My niece pointed at me and shouted that I'd stolen from her, violated her privacy, and she was going to call the police. I looked her dead in the face and said, "Go ahead." That shut her up. Then, for the first time since this nightmare started, I turned to my sister. And I said exactly what I'd been holding back. I told her her daughter had turned into someone I didn't even recognize. That I tried everything, fed them, housed them, protected them. And all I got in return was gaslighting, disrespect, and financial ruin. I told her that if she wasn't willing to parent her child, then she'd failed both as a mother and as my sister. Her husband stood there silently in the doorway. He didn't say a word. And I wasn't done. I told them they had 14 days to get out of my house. That was it. No more chances, no more warnings. They were going to figure it out on their own, just like I had for the last 10 years. I said I'd give them resources if they needed them, but I wasn't going to carry them anymore. My sister started crying again, saying it wasn't fair, that they weren't ready. And that's when I dropped the last piece. I told them I'd call a family friend who runs a restaurant. They had 3 positions open: dishwasher, host, server. I told them the friend agreed to hire all 3 of them if they showed up Monday morning. My niece laughed in disbelief. My sister looked horrified. They thought I was joking. I wasn't. None of them answered me that night. But the next morning, the husband, the same man who'd yelled at me a week ago, walked into the kitchen and asked what time the shift started. He didn't say thank you. But at least he was finally scared enough to move. Monday morning came, and for the first time in months, the house was dead silent at 7 a.m. No one scrolling, no giggling FaceTime calls, no cereal bowls left out. Just quiet. Then I heard the front door close. I looked out the window and saw my sister's husband getting into their car. He was actually going. No fanfare, no speeches. Just gone. An hour later, my sister shuffled into the kitchen. She poured a cup of coffee and mumbled something about giving the job a shot. I nodded. I didn't say I was surprised. I didn't tell her that the friend had already called me earlier and said if they didn't show up, the offer was off for good. At noon, my niece finally emerged. She didn't speak, didn't look at me, just stood by the counter and waited for the microwave to beep. Then she asked quietly if the rest of her orders were being returned, too. I told her there were a few more things we hadn't gotten to yet: a pair of sunglasses, a luxury face serum, and a Bluetooth speaker. The return window was still open. And yes, we were returning those, too. She muttered that it was humiliating. I agreed. We went to the mall together. Not because I thought it would be some bonding moment, but because she was legally an adult, and some of the returns required ID verification. I let her handle it. I watched her face when the cashier asked, "Do you have the original payment method?" And she had to say, it was my aunt's card. One by one, the items disappeared. Refunds processed. Almost $6,000 recovered by the time we were done. It wasn't all of it, some purchases were final sale. But it was enough. I told her to keep the receipts. I wasn't covering for her if anything came back on my statement later. Back in the car, she sat with her arms crossed, fuming. She said I didn't understand what it was like to feel like you had nothing. That shopping gave her control, a break from stress. I didn't argue. But I asked her what she thought my life looked like. Did she think I got here by shopping my way out of stress? Did she realize I hadn't bought myself a new pair of shoes in over a year because I was too busy paying to keep 5 people afloat? She didn't answer. Just looked out the window. That night, I went into my room, shut the door, and for the first time in months, I let myself feel everything. The exhaustion, the frustration, the deep, crushing disappointment. But also something else. Clarity. I had tried. I gave them everything. Shelter, food, a second, third, fourth chance. I handed them jobs. I returned the stolen money. I stayed calm when I wanted to scream. I offered them a way out, and they barely took it. Her father came home from his first shift and went straight to bed. My sister followed not long after, saying she didn't think she could handle the pressure. My niece said the restaurant was not her vibe and she was going to look for something more aligned with her personality. So, I made one final decision. I typed up a letter. It was short. Just a notice that they had 10 days left. That the spare key was being deactivated. That I'd arranged for temporary storage if they needed help moving their things. But after that? Done. I left the letter on the kitchen table. In the morning, it was still there, untouched. They didn't say a word. 10 days passed. On the morning of the deadline, I woke up at 6 a.m. and found the house quiet. I went downstairs expecting a fight, or at the very least some last-minute guilt trip. But the guest room was empty. Their stuff was gone. The only sign they had ever been there was a half-eaten box of cereal on the counter and a pair of cheap flip-flops by the door. They left without saying goodbye. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't need to know where they were going or what their plan was. I'd done more than enough. For 6 months, I lived their struggle like it was my own. While they walked around like I owed them my stability, my patience, my peace. I sacrificed everything, money, time, even my own daughter's comfort, just to keep them afloat. And the whole time, I thought if I gave more, they'd change. But I was wrong. People don't change because you make life easier for them. They change when they decide to. And they never did. The next few days were the quietest my house had felt in half a year. I cleaned out the guest room. My daughter helped me turn it back into a music room, just like she used to have. She didn't say much about them leaving, just smiled when I gave her back her old space. I checked my bank account. Just over $6,100. Not everything, but close. Enough to start rebuilding. Enough to breathe again. Then, 5 days after they left, I got a call from my sister. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long message. Said they were staying with an old friend. That her husband was trying to stick with the job. That my niece was processing everything and reevaluating her goals. She ended the message with a sentence that made me pause. We know we messed up, but I hope you won't shut us out forever. I didn't respond. Because I am shutting them out. Not out of spite, not for revenge. But because I finally learned something I should have known a long time ago. I can't keep living my life as the safety net for people who refuse to climb. From now on, my attention goes to the people who respect it. To my daughter. To my home. To myself. No more rescuing people who sink every lifeboat I send. No more holding space for grown adults who use kindness like a credit card. I was good. I was useful. I was the glue. And it broke me. That won't happen again.